Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Monday, everybody. It's time once again for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, we're still at our makeshift studio because our new studio is still being built.
What are they doing over there? They need to get to work.
They have been working.
I don't want to do this from here.
I know, but people said they like this set too.
They did? Well,
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay, all right. We're
I like
trying
the
to
old set, but now we're getting a new set, and I will adapt to that. But right now, I'm not wanting to adapt to this.
All right, but we have
For one thing, we're in here bugging Dan.
Yeah, we are bugging Dan. We're bugging our chief meteorologist, Dan. Keeping you company. There you go. He might have to ask a question. If we do it here another week in our makeshift studio, we're going to have Dan Scoff ask a question to you, Mike, okay? But we have to get into this week's questions, and our first question is from Harold Carpenter, who wants to know what was different about Hunter Hollan in his win over South Carolina. Never in 100 years did I think he would pitch a complete game. I'm with him there. I didn't think that would happen either.
Yeah, he went 3 2/3 the week before, so he goes from that to a complete game and 113 pitches or whatever. The biggest difference was, to me, he kept runners off the base. I mean, even the one run he gave up was a home run, but if there's nobody on base, that's just one run. That's a lot better than having 3 on base or 2. At one point, he retired 19 straight batters. That's 6 innings with nobody on base, 6 innings plus with nobody on base. So if you don't have anybody on base, you're not going to score runs. That's basically how he did it. Now, from a more technical standpoint, Dave Van Horn said it was all about location. He was just hitting his spots. And that's what pitching is, right? It's location, location, location. If you put the ball where you want to put it. And he said even when he missed, he didn't miss badly. You know, and that's in contrast to when he was struggling and had that leg injury, and some of Arkansas's other pitchers earlier this year, what are they doing? They're hitting guys, they're walking guys, then giving up hits. So when you don't do those things, this is what can happen. And this is a rare year in which Arkansas has now had 2 complete games pitched. Will McIntyre did it earlier in the year, so now this is 2. And all those people that said, Matt Hobbs, we got to get rid of that guy. They look kind of goofy.
Matt Hobbs, I like that. They look goofy now because they have the best team ERA in the SEC, right?
How does that happen?
I don't know, especially with all of those injuries. You got to say, well, what's going on there?
They've done a really good job of adjusting and moving people around and taking a chance on this guy and that guy and putting here. I mean, the whole thing about moving Hunter Hollan back to the Sunday or the Game 3 start to give him more time to rehab that leg injury. All of that stuff, those decisions that are made have paid off. And ultimately, that's what baseball is all about. In baseball, managers, coaches, or whatever have to make all kinds of guesses. They're guessing all the time. Well, I think I should do this. No, wait a minute. No, I'm doing this. And then it either pays off or it doesn't. And that determines whether you win or not.
It really does. You know, you went technically why he did better in this game, but I think it also had something to do with his mom. His mom had
His
such.
mommy.
Yes, I mean, he said the game was for her. He dedicated it to her after the game. It was Mother's Day, and you heard the story of her going through. I think she broke some bones, and she had to go to the hospital. It was just a hard week for her. So I think something like that can fuel a pitcher too. It's
Sure,
a little bit emotional as well. I'm going to say that's part of the answer too. Lost in Swine asked, would you put Peyton Holt on the bench once Peyton Stovall gets healthy? Stats say keep playing Holt.
Yeah, that's a dilemma. That's one of the things that's come up when they've had to make these changes with all these injuries to the lineup. For instance, Holt's currently batting .333, whereas Stovall was at .253 when he was put on the shelf with that injury. You know, you can say Stovall is a very good second baseman, but so is Holt. I mean, he's playing a really good second base, and I think he batted .600 in this series. I mean, he did all kinds of things. He was stealing bases or whatever. So what do? To me, you got to be careful. Tavian Josenberger came back and went 1 for 7. I don't think you take a layoff like that and just come back in and pick up where you left off.
No.
So I think maybe what you do is if you decide to bring a certain player back like Stovall or Wagner, maybe what you do is let them pinch hit late in the game, make a change late in the game so that they're only going to bat once or twice rather than start them. But You know, the truth is, with all of what Stovall has done, what he did in the postseason last year, do you really keep him on the bench? I think you only do that if the shoulder injury continues to be a problem. And what this means is you got a good option if that happens.
Yeah, definitely, Mike. Mousetown says, with all this Arkansas baseball team has had to overcome, I'm stunned that those guys led the SEC with lead the SEC with one series left. How did this happen?
Okay,
I have that question.
Mousetown should be clueless because he was the guy that was mad about Lipscomb last week, remember?
He was, yes.
He was all mad about losing to Lipscomb. So here's what I would say. Now you see why you play people like Peyton Holt in a midweek game. It doesn't mean you're not trying to win the game. It does mean you're trying to put people in there and get them some experience. And also, how did they do it? Well, first of all, we already talked about it, pitching. I mean, there were all these games in the SEC where teams scored 40 runs or whatever on the weekend. And what was the total run total this weekend? It was way down there.
Yeah, way down, yeah.
I mean, it was just a few. And it was all done on pitching. So when you very quietly become, and one of the mistakes I've made, and I admit this, in talking about this team over the past few weeks, I've always quoted overall stats. And you shouldn't do that because we're talking SEC right now. And when you go to SEC stats only, as I said earlier, Arkansas has the best ERA, and it's not even close, really.
No.
And they're right there with Vanderbilt for best defense numbers in the SEC. So when you look at those things, that's about defense. And as long as I've been around, my dad used to tell me this when I was 7 or 8 years old, baseball is all about pitching and defense. Yeah, we like runs scored and all that. But when you get teams that can pitch this way, and teams that can play the kind of defense they play, you win games. And so that's how they've done this. And again, you're surprised because you were too worried about the Lipscomb game.
That you didn't see this all
Boo
coming.
to Mousetown.
I mean, you have to really, and we said this on the show last week, but I'm going to say it again. I've seen them put up the graphic for Coach of the Year. And, you know, Dave Van Horn is like #1 to get it. And how could you argue that he shouldn't after seeing exactly what he's done with what he's had to deal with, the injuries piling up and all of that? How can you say, no, he doesn't deserve that?
People are talking about LSU's injuries now and how it's affected them. They just lost a series at home to a team that Arkansas swept on the road.
On the road, yeah.
So, you know, excuses are interesting, but I like Dave Van Horn. He didn't worry about excuses. He just figures out a way to solve the problem.
He really does. That's why I think you got to say that's Coach of the Year material right there. Razor Alex 88 says, I've been reflecting on last week's question about the Lipscomb loss. I think it is a good thing to get younger guys experience during midweek games. I must wonder if it adds fuel to their desire to improve when it is their turn to become starters. You kind of touched on that.
Well, of course it does. I mean, there's two components to this when you're playing guys that are not starting in weekend games when you play them in midweek games. The first thing is you're giving them experience. How do you get better if you don't play? You're not going to get better if you're just sitting there in the dugout watching. So that's one reason you play some of these guys in midweek games. But the other is emotional. I mean, anybody that's ever been involved in any sport that didn't start can tell you what it's like. I played junior high football for 2 years and never got in a game. Could have easily quit. But I became a 3-year starter on the varsity when I got bigger and ended up a captain in all district and all South Plains. No one would have ever predicted that when I was in the 7th and 8th grade, but I almost quit because I never got in a game. They never put me in at all. And I think that's a mistake. There were some games where we were so far behind, what difference did it make? And I'm always a big believer in if the game is not going to be affected, play some of your other guys. That's why I like the old days when you had, for instance, in college football, you had a freshman team because freshmen weren't eligible, so you played a separate schedule. So those guys got an opportunity to play. Yeah, I'm not so sure we shouldn't have B teams in all of these sports.
B teams, I love that.
Play a B team schedule.
Yeah.
Have a B team baseball team, and these guys you're not playing, play them in another game. You know, play them in the game that you don't play. Like if there's a Wednesday, if you play on Wednesday but don't play on Thursday, play a game on Thursday.
Yeah, I like
play
that
a B team
idea.
game. They're not going to do that, but again, this is as close as you're going to come in college baseball. And this is the reason why you play midweek games.
Well, and clearly, if you looked at the rankings this week, Arkansas's number 2 right now in those national rankings. I know Hog fans don't want to be number 1 for obvious reasons, but number 2, obviously, those midweek games that, the midweek losses didn't affect that this week. It didn't affect those national rankings at the end of the year, right? I mean, they're not looking back and going, oh, well, they lost to Lipscomb. Oh,
That's right.
Right?
So, again, there's reasons why you do what Dave Van Horn does in these midweek games.
I think those midweek games are very, very important. Like you, Mike, I think that is very, very true. Texarkana Bob wants to know, is it weird that in a 3-game series between the number 3 and 6 teams in the country, all 3 were on SEC Plus and not the main network?
Weird, unfortunately, it's not weird because ESPN has a history of doing this sort of thing.
They do.
Honestly, they do. I mean, you stop and think about this. Where is there a better college baseball venue than Baum Walker? There's not one.
Personally, in my opinion, there's not.
There's not one. All right. When you get a top 6, top 5, top 6 matchup this late in the season, what are you going to get? You're going to get a full stadium every night. Okay? So if you're ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN whatever, ESPN News,
well, even
any
SEC
of these
Network.
things, SEC Network, any of these things that are not streaming, because let's face it, there are those of us who have, you and I have, we have ESPN Plus, so we can get any games that are streamed, but a lot of people still can't. So they're not going to be able to see a game like that. So if you're the ESPN people and you've got a venue like that and you've got teams like that playing each other, why would you not want that on the air? Why would you not want that on your airwaves? And it's because you don't have a brain in your head. It's because your executives at ESPN don't know what they're doing.
Well, because I have friends who work in those offices up at ESPN, and they're pushing ESPN Plus so hard. They want more subscribers. They want more people signing up for that. Mike, how do you do that? How do you get more subscribers?
So they're trying to force people to sign up.
Exactly. They're trying to push people into signing up for that.
If that's the reason, it just makes them even more gooberish.
I mean, I agree with you. I'm just saying.
There's plenty of people, and as time goes by, more and more people will find out what streaming does, and they'll go to it too. I think streaming is great.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I can sit, like I've mentioned before, I'll sit there watching a game that's being streamed, an Arkansas game being streamed on my TV. I got my phone maybe to an LSU game, and I got my computer maybe to a Vanderbilt game.
Yeah.
I can watch 3 games at one time.
Yeah.
And you can do that when you've got streaming. So I think it's great.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have to keep games that should be your feature game off where you have your highest number of viewers simply because you're trying to push ESPN3.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that's another reason probably why they're doing that. I'm going to show you though, Mike. Have you ever done the thing where you split your TV into multiple screens?
I know you got that too.
I know. I'm going to show you that. I can show you how to do that.
I don't need to do it. I can do it.
You want just 8 devices?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, that's on you. J. Mark wants to know, why are games not being broadcast on the SEC alternative channel?
Okay, so see, this would be another way that you could do that. For instance, if you've got a game on ESPN, another top-ranked game on ESPN2, and then another one on SEC Network, and you're trying to reach as many people as possible, you could use that alternative channel. I don't know why they don't do that. To me, it looks like the only reason they use the alternative channel is during football and basketball season when a game is scheduled and it runs long and another one's supposed to start and they can't be on the same thing, like if you had 2 games on ESPN or 2 games on ESPN2, then what they'll do is tell you to go to one of these other channels, and sometimes they use the alternative channel.
Like ESPN News or something like that?
Yeah, but the extra channel, the one that's...
Oh, yeah, the SEC Network
and
TV.
I don't understand why they don't use it more often. They don't. Maybe it costs them money. I don't know. You'd have to staff it or something.
Yeah.
But you've got it. Why not use it? It's a good question, and one, again, we should address these things to Ask ESPN, not Ask Mike, because I don't know what's going on there.
Maybe I'll need to ask my friend who works in programming.
Ask your friend that works, and then she can make up a stupid excuse.
She can make up a silly excuse for that?
It's not really valid.
I'll see what she says. Blood Red Hog asks, do the Hogs have a top 8 national seed wrapped up, or will the Vandy series determine this?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be very difficult now for them to drop below about a 5 or 6 seed. Maybe if they got swept at Vanderbilt, which I don't think is going to happen. But I think they've got it. Now, why is that important? We've talked about this. It's not all that important for Arkansas. We saw what happened last year when they went on the road. They still made it to Omaha. Arkansas made it to Omaha and went through Waco. Arkansas went through Oklahoma City and then Tallahassee one year and went to the College World Series. They've shown their ability to win on the road in the NCAA playoffs. The problem for that is it leaves out the fans. And as much as I think Arkansas fans enjoyed watching Arkansas go to Omaha, and it was fun if you went over to Stillwater watching them beat the Oklahoma State Cowboys.
That was
and
awesome.
Mr. whatever his name was, like to prance around.
Oh, base prancer?
Yeah. As much as they enjoyed that and their stupid fans that tried to act like they were ushers over there. And then, you went to Chapel Hill.
Oh, that was great.
And so it was all right.
There was a lot of Arkansas fans there.
But it's hard for some people to do that. It's easy to drive over to Stillwater. How easy is it to get to Chapel Hill? It's not easy to fly
and
there.
Flights were expensive too. I remember that.
So what this does is it allows people to go to a home game if you've got season tickets, because that's about the only way you're getting in here. But so this is really more about the fans being a national seed, because you get to see a regional, then it may be a super regional, and then hopefully it won't be like it was 2 years ago. You will advance out of that to Omaha, and it'll be just a continuation of a great season.
Yeah, I heard, I was listening to one of those NCAA baseball podcasts, and they were talking about Arkansas, Mike, and they were saying that, to lock it all up and for us to be super duper extra 99, 100% confident in Arkansas getting a top 8 national seed, 40 wins is the magic number. So they have 38 right now, which would mean
that's nonsense.
They would need a advance. But I thought that was silly, because I said, I don't think they need 40 wins to prove they're a top 8 national seed.
They would be a number 2 seed right now.
Yeah,
so
I know.
They're going to lose 2 games at
and they're going to drop that much?
Drop that much? No way.
No way. Absolutely not. Hog in Iowa wants to know if the Hogs are chosen as one of the 16 regional sites and then go on to host a super regional, how is the revenue from ticket sales divvied up with the NCAA? Does potential attendance, tickets sold, play a part in deciding who hosts?
Yeah, it does. I don't think it's a huge factor, because if it were, we wouldn't have seen Arkansas go on the road so many times.
Right.
Like last year, for instance, you could have given them a regional, but they didn't. And so I do think that it's a factor sometimes when a team deserves to be a 1 seed in a particular regional, but they're not in a position to host. Believe it or not, there are teams out there that have a really good season, but their stadium is such where they know they're not going to have a big crowd, and they'd rather go play somewhere else in front of a lot more fans, and they willingly agree to be a 1 seed hosted by a 2 seed, and we've seen that happen. Now, in the case of Missouri State a few years ago, because they use a minor league baseball stadium as their home stadium, and there was a conflict there, they couldn't host. So they had to come here. Arkansas hosted, but was a 2 seed, and advanced to the College World Series out of that. So it happens, but it's not the number 1 deciding factor. I still think you get a regional based on, what you've done during the year, provided you at least have some sort of an ability to host an event and get some people in there. I don't think they just go, oh yeah, we can sell 11,000 tickets a game for this. Let's don't let these guys host. Some other team, they've only got a 3,000 seat stadium. I don't think that happens.
Well, some of those things, like you were talking about, the factors of the stadium, that's what happened with UCA softball. They couldn't host a regional because they have a turf field, and that's not allowed. You can't host if you have a turf field. So they were in a situation where now they're on the road in Tuscaloosa taking on Alabama in that bracket, and I think some of that was maybe decided because UCA can't host a regional.
So the answer is sometimes it happens, but it's usually because of your inability either under rules or, and again, sometimes the school willingly gives that up.
Exactly. Randall Files at the Stadium Shop asks, how serious is the condition of Quincy McAdoo?
Everybody's asking about that. I guess his grandmother has been on Facebook.
Yeah.
And
a week ago. She posted on, I think, May 5th was the last update.
And said, there have been all these rumors that he had a serious back injury, he would never play football again, lucky to be alive in all of this. And she kind of, it looked like to me maybe she posted to kind of counteract that a little bit, because she said he's out of bed, he's no longer confined to a hospital bed, and that he's walking and he's getting stronger every day. There hasn't been an update, I don't think, since then. Now, this whole issue of will he be ready to play this year, it's hard to imagine that. I don't know anything about his medical condition, but if the injuries were as serious as we're led to believe, I don't think you're worried at this point about being ready next year. I think you're worried about getting back and maybe being able to play again. So if he has to sit out a year to come back next year and be ready to go, that would be, I think, he's probably okay with that. He's probably smart enough to understand the situation that he's in. And if he comes back and there's a miracle recovery and he's ready in time in August, which is 3.5 months or whatever, then that's better. But I've noticed they're bringing in a lot of guys in the secondary right now, so I don't know if they know something about that or whatever. But I was on the radio with Phil Elson today, and he and Matt Jones were talking about it. They both agreed it would be very difficult for him to be ready in August, considering the seriousness of those injuries.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we're cautiously optimistic that he will be okay. It's just the timeline, we're just not sure of that right now. And so I think it would be a bit of a rush, because it would be three months, right? I mean, that's not a ton of time. So we'll keep you updated on that situation, of course. Razor Boo wants to know, why is KJ Jefferson left off of nearly every preseason quarterback list? His QB ranking has been as good as anyone the past 2 seasons, but he and the Razorbacks get no respect. I don't know what list they're looking at, because I have seen him on a few.
Yeah, ESPN, for instance, has him at number 12 nationally and 3rd in the SEC. 247 has him 15th in the country and 3rd in the SEC. And for whatever reason, of all people, Auburn Daily.
I saw that.
Auburn Daily has KJ Jefferson listed as the top returning quarterback in the SEC. And they had a real nice write-up explaining why they believed that. So I think he's getting plenty of publicity. I don't think he's being overlooked. If anybody is overlooking him right now, I think it has more to do with the fact that he's got a new offensive coordinator. He's going to be running a new offense. And until you see how that works, I've said that myself, I'm reserving judgment on him right now a little bit based on the fact that I just haven't seen enough of him in this new offense. It's a new situation for him. They're taking him out of his comfort zone, away from what he's known at the college level. He's always had the same quarterbacks coach running the same offense in the previous 2 seasons, so everything is new for him.
It really is. You didn't say this on there, but Pro Football Focus also has him as a top 5 quarterback returning this year. So I don't think there's any lack of respect for KJ Jefferson. I was on the radio in Panama City, my old stomping ground, the other day, and they were going, man, we are so excited to watch KJ Jefferson. We're so excited to watch KJ Jefferson. That's in Florida. They're a Florida station.
Right.
So
well, he's a fun player to watch.
I'm like, I think he's getting a lot of respect. Hot Dogger asks, does Dominique Johnson have a chance to show his skills since his torn ACL? I can't wait. I think it's supposed to say, I can't wait to see him back to his pre-injury self and drag players with him down the field.
As far as we know, he's going to be available for August camp. Yeah. They held him out of spring football. If you'll remember, he was coming off an ACL surgery the previous spring, and he came out and I guess tore it again. So this time they were being very cautious and held him out of spring football. But from everything I've heard, they expect him to be ready in August.
I guess we'll find out August camp, right?
Razorback fans will love to see him back there, because he is so different from the other backs they have.
Oh, he definitely.
He's kind of a combination of the other backs. He's quicker than you realize, but he's strong, and he just has an ability to find holes.
And he's big. I mean, that size is so needed there. I mean, you obviously
really good on the goal line.
Yeah, definitely. S. Giles says, I'm still confused about the Ron Holland situation. How long does we have to wait to see if Texas releases him?
I think that he asked for his release maybe the last day of
it was April 28th.
April 28th.
There you go.
So if that's right, then they have until the 28th of this month.
Yep, 30 days.
To make a decision. So what do we have? About 2 more weeks?
Yeah, about that.
They could make everybody wait 2 more weeks, and then if they say no, then he has to apply for a waiver, and I'm not sure how long that waiver would take. I wouldn't think more than a week or two, but we may be well into next month before we find out about him. And everybody's got their own opinion on this, and I'm not a recruiting guru or a portal guru or any of that stuff, but I think he's coming.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Kevin McPherson, who is our Hog Hoops guy, and he was saying to me that, we might find out earlier than that. He has a good feeling that he's coming too, but even if Texas doesn't release him or anything like that in 2 weeks, he could decide to maybe pursue a G League route or a pro route if he wanted to, without them ever releasing him, because obviously that doesn't matter with your NLI. So, I mean, it could be that we find out even sooner if he does decide to go a pro route, just in case.
But the fact that he hasn't decided tells me
a lot,
he's waiting.
Yeah, Hog Redneck wants to know, is there a Razorback coach that you really liked who got fired? Did you have mixed feelings when he or she got the axe? That's a good question.
Yeah, there's been a couple of them, but the best example is Jack Crow. What can I say about Jack Crow? He was just a really fun guy to be around, and he told you everything. He trusted you. I've always liked coaches that had enough brains, and I've mentioned Frank Broyles, to look at a reporter like me and say, okay, I can trust this person. I will share information with them that will allow them to do their job. They're not going to run out and report everything I say. And I'll give you a good example. One of the things that he did one day before practice, I'm just walking down the sidelines. I mean, we're probably 20 minutes away from the start of practice. And he comes up behind me, kind of startles me. He's talking. I'm turn around, and there he is. And he said, hey, I got a question to ask you. And I was like, what? And he goes, Frank keeps bugging me, Broyles. Frank keeps bugging me. He wants to go to the one back, which would be an I formation. And he said, he just wants me to do it. And I said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, I don't have a one back. I don't have a good candidate. He said, you can't run an I formation without an I formation tailback. So I said, what do you think? He said, what do you think I ought to do? And I said, look, here's what I know about Frank. He just wants to win. So if you changed your offense and didn't have an I formation tailback and you lost because of it, he'd still be mad at you. So you might as well do what you want to do, because all it boils down to is whether you win or not. If you win, he's going to be happy no matter what you do. If you lose, he's going to be mad at you no matter what you do. So do what you think you should do. So, he just asked questions like that. He really made you feel like it wasn't that I was impressed that he let me. I thought he was stupid for asking me, first of all, because who cares what I think? But the point is, the fact that he would share that with you, and that I now knew Frank was putting pressure on him, which was no shock, because Frank did that to all of his coaches. He was always making suggestions, and this was just another suggestion for another coach. Did I have mixed emotions when he got fired? I did not, because what I understood about Jack was that while it was fun having him there, I also knew he wasn't winning. And if he's not winning, that's not fun. It's not fun for the fans. So I understood why he had to go. My advice to him at the time was, go back and be an offensive coordinator. You're one of the best out there. Because I felt like he was another one of those guys that had a great personality to be an offensive coordinator, but not a head coach. This guy was a math whiz in college. He was the kind of guy that could sit around in a room by himself and figure stuff out. And that's what coordinators do. They come up with game plans and play sequences and all that stuff. He was really good at that. But when you have to relate to large numbers of players and stuff like that, he wasn't very good at that. So my advice to him would have been, I can't remember if he asked, but it was, go be an offensive coordinator again. You can be one of the best in the country. I think he could have probably had a top 5 job, been an offensive coordinator at a top 5 program. He was that good. But instead, he went on and became a head coach again at Jacksonville State, which when he started, I think was D2. He had an okay career there. He coached for 12 years. He was a little bit above 500. And if that's what made him happy, it's his life, not mine. But I wasn't upset that he got fired. I wasn't sitting there going, gee, I'd like this guy to stay here because he's really cool and he talks to me. I mean, it's just not what. And to a certain extent, Danny Ford fits that bill too. Danny was a guy that he had a different personality than Jack. Danny was a guy that he kind of had a mischievous personality. He liked to take little shots at people. you know.
Okay.
But he was really funny. But he had this one flaw that I could see right away. And it's the opposite of the way almost every coach thinks. He liked his assistant coaches to be mad at each other. His last few years here, his offensive coaches and his defensive coaches couldn't stand each other. It was like they were on a different, one of his offensive coordinators said on the air, I was doing an interview with him, he said, I don't know what's going on here. Are we on the same team or not? And he was talking about the guys on the defensive side of the ball. After a game one night, the defensive coordinator criticized the offensive coordinator. And Danny should have, most coaches would have stepped in and said, you idiots, you're hurting us. We got to be unified. He didn't care. And somebody explained it to me one time. He said, Danny grew up kind of with a trailer park mentality where guys just get out and yell at each other. I don't know, I'm probably being unfair to people who live in trailer parks. But the general perception is that, you know, or you live in a neighborhood. Have you ever heard about a neighborhood where people stand around in the yard and yell at each other?
I've seen some of those neighborhoods.
Well, he sort of grew up under those circumstances where people just kind of yell out their problems. I had relatives like that. Some of them got along and they were real nice, but I had relatives that would just stand around mad at each other all the time. And they still liked each other and cared about each other. It's the way they did things. And I think that was his mentality. He felt like, you know, if there was a competition going on, it'd make everybody better. And maybe in some situations it would work. In this, it backfired. And so he got fired. Was I sad when he got fired? I would have been cool to still have him around. But again, he wasn't winning. And something had to be done. So I'm not going to sit there and go, gee, I like this guy, so I hope they keep him even though Arkansas loses. Because ultimately, my loyalty has to be with the fans because I don't have a job if it's not for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if fans aren't paying attention to what we're doing, we don't have a job.
And they pay attention when the teams win.
And when the team wins, they're happy.
Yeah, for sure.
So if they're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that one. If the fans are happy, we're happy too. That's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.